Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Conscious Parenting series. Tonight, we are going to be talking about unity and encouragement. Okay. So, welcome to Parent Therapy. I always like to start these off by saying this is a safe space. You are welcome here. Your parenting struggles are welcome here. And I encourage you to kind of let your guard down and try to be open-minded. We all know the struggles of parenting and how difficult it can be to raise these little ones, and that it's okay. This is a space where you can be brave and be vulnerable. This is what we're here for. Okay. And to let go any shame and guilt you might carry about what parenting has looked like up until this point. Obviously, you're watching these because you want parenting to possibly look differently in your family. And it's okay. We all have really hard moments with our kids. And I just want you to remember that this is a journey. This is not something that's going to change immediately overnight. This is something that is a process. And it's about failing and missteps and trying again over and over. And that there's not going to be a trophy at the end, but that this can be really life-changing for your relationships with your children and with others in your life. And so we just have to let go of that shame and guilt and realize that we're just all on a journey with this parenting experience. Okay. So with that being said, my expectations for these classes are that we have the core belief that all parents are doing the best they can with the knowledge and resources they have available to them. Get comfortable with being vulnerable, and progress, not perfection, is the goal that we have to being the best we can for ourselves and our families. And you cannot do it all. So at the end of this class, I don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, that's too much. I can't do all of that. Just pick one thing. Just pick one thing you want to try, one takeaway from tonight's class to just try to implement with your family. And that's how we start building change over time, is just trying one thing at a time and just continuing to add. Okay. So, quick introduction for those of you that don't know me. I have a degree in early childhood education, and I've been a teacher for over 7 years, and I now work as a parent educator for Winsville Parents as Teachers. I'm a mom of two. Those are my two littles right there. And I also am a volunteer support coordinator for Postpartum Support International, and I'm on their board for the Missouri chapter as well. I am fluent in conscious discipline and project approach, Regio and project-based learning, social constructivism. I've also done work in international baccalaureate curriculum implementation, and then I do a lot of trainings in trauma-informed support with women and children. Okay. All right, so just a little refresher about conscious discipline. It is an evidence-based trauma-informed approach. It is recognized by many different programs as being very highly rated for a social emotional learning program. It is an adult-first discipline model, and it is evidence-based and trauma-informed, and it utilizes brain science research. Okay. Just a refresher on the brain states, and if you want to learn more about this, you can watch my intro class. But just as a refresher, these are the brain states that we typically see when working with our children, but also with anyone. These are brain states that we all go through in dysregulation. So we have the survival brain state. This is when you are in your brainstem. And this is the fight, flight, or freeze. It's sometimes fawn reaction. Your brain in these moments is asking if you're safe. You cannot logic with a child who is in their brainstem. This is typically a pretty physical reaction, as far as like there's not much that the child is not in control of their body, right? Like these are the innate responses that we're driven by. Okay. If a tiger attacked you, you're gonna fight back, right? So this is that survival state. It is pre-programmed in our bodies. Then we have the emotional, the limbic system. And this is where we get a lot of crying and whining and yelling, maybe excitement. So this is that part of your brain that is asking, am I loved? Am I seen? Am I connected? And then we have the executive state, and this is when you're in your prefrontal cortex. And this is where you are calm and cooperative, you're collaborative, you can make choices. And at this point, your brain is asking, what can I learn? So ideally, this is where we want our children to be, right? But we have to learn how to move them through the other two states of the brain. So like I said, if you're interested in learning more about that, that's just a little bit of a refresher. You can absolutely watch the intro class to kind of go more into depth about that. But tonight we're going to be talking about a power and a skill. But before we do that, we're going to watch this little video. We're not going to watch the whole thing, just part of it. Sorry about that.
Got it.
There we go.
The baby spends the first few months of its life clinging to its mother. And from this privileged and protected position, it has a grandstand view of what's going on and how things are done. These particular chimps, living in the forest of the Ivory Coast, have devised a special skill all of their own. They've learned how to crack nuts, and these are now a favorite part of their diet. But when you're only 9 months old, watching mother crack nuts loses its fascination after a bit. The shells, on the other hand, have possibilities as toys. You also need to learn pretty quickly who among the adults is likely to be your friend and who it might be safer to steer clear of. Slightly older infant is beginning to follow the big boys and copy the way they behave, so discovering what life is like among the grown-ups. And mother is always there to provide comfort and protection when things get a bit baffling and worrisome.
Okay, I'm going to stop that one right there. We're going to watch another video really quick, and then we'll kind of talk about these.
To answer that question, we set up a hidden camera experiment to see if this woman would stand up at the sound of this tone, simply because everyone else is. You might be thinking you'd never go along with this. Or would you? For just 3 beeps, and without knowing why she's doing it, this woman is now conforming perfectly to the group. But what happens if we take the group away?
Elaine, please.
Okay, now she's alone. The crowd is gone and nobody is watching her except our hidden cameras. What do you think she'll do? She's now conforming to the rules of the group without them even being there. Now, watch what happens when we introduce another outsider who doesn't know the rules.
Have a seat and they'll be out in just a couple minutes. Thanks so much. Everybody was doing so I thought I was supposed to.
Think she'll teach the new guy what to do? We kept the cameras rolling as more unsuspecting patients arrived. And slowly but surely, what began as a random rule for this woman has now become the social norm for everyone in this waiting room. Here to explain what's going on in their brain.
Okay, we're not going to watch the rest of that. But my point being, with both of these videos, is that we as mammals are social creatures. We are wired to tune in to what is happening with the groups around us, with our society, our culture, with our families, whatever, because it literally primes us for survival, right? So we have actually been dependent on this for survival from the beginning. We learn best in high groups. We're able to survive longer when we're in social groups. We can advance to a higher degree. At birth, babies start building, one of the first things they do is start building attachments and bonds between themselves and their caregivers in order to meet their need. This is literally something that we're wired for. And they do this so much, actually, there's actually research that shows that that babies also view their mothers as essentially an extension of themselves, right? That it takes them a while to understand that they are their own being and that their mother is a separate entity, because they ingrain so much in that belief for survival. And so we also needed this in our prehistoric hunting groups, this synchronization with your social group and being in tune with the social group and what the social group was doing was dependent on your survival. If you were out hunting and the person to the left of you flinched or they were startled, you were going to react the same way because you were hyper aware of the group, because it meant that if they were sensing something that maybe you hadn't, and you reacted anyways, you were more likely to survive if like a tiger was coming out to attack you. Okay. So this is something that we see play throughout time. Okay. We saw this, it started with our simple social groups, like we were just talking about in those prehistoric times. And then we saw this building of simple family units and the development of these small villages and communities. And we now have seen that build into more complex civilizations in our modern world, and even to very, very developed communities and societies. But that these cultures in our societies are informed, they're formed around this interdependence and this interconnectedness and how we influence each other all around the world. I love that picture of Singapore. It looks really awesome. So often we're actually way more connected than we even realize. So if you have ever heard of the Pando tree system, this is essentially a forest that consists of over 40,000 trees and covers 100 acres of land out in, I believe in Colorado. And while it looks like a forest with separate trees, this is actually all one tree. It's a male aspen, and its root system is actually connected underneath the ground. And so each tree is actually, upon inspection, genetically the same, like has the same DNA. It's all coming from the same place. And it's making it actually the single most dense organism by mass on Earth. It just kind of shows you that interconnectedness that's happening. And even in pregnancy now, we have research that shows us that the fetal cells can actually migrate into a mother's body during pregnancy, and those cells have been discovered all the way in the mother's brain. And some have even been found to be at injury sites within the mother, insinuating that they have actually been helping to defend the body of the mom from trauma. And this interconnectedness has a real effect on all of us. So many of you have probably heard of like the butterfly effect or watched the movie, The Butterfly Effect. And it's this idea that even small, insignificant moments have this ripple effect that create a larger, unexpected impact because of our world's interdependence. Okay. And we are so desperate for this interconnectedness and unity to be a part of the social group that we have actually used isolation and things like banishment or ostracism as punishment and torture for thousands of years in our communities, right? And we know now that social rejection actually lights up the same parts of the brain as physical pain. That this social ostracism and being removed from the group is actually physically painful. And we'll come back to this idea later when we talk about consequences and punishments, but that's not our topic for tonight. So our topic for tonight is, however, the power of unity. And so for conscious disciplines, power of unity, I want you to remember the big idea is that we are all in this together, that we have to perceive compassionately and offer compassion to others and ourselves. And this is so, so important when we think about this interdependence. And when we start viewing our world through this lens of interconnectedness, we begin to focus more on our relationships with others and our part to play in that experience. Okay. We know that our relationships, often with our family members or with our spouses, are often connected to our actions, right? That like what we put into our relationship, we're going to get out of it, right? And often we tend to lose sight of that impact with our child. We have to remember and like take a step back and realize that like our child isn't just a creature to be parented. Okay. This is a more complex relationship than that. You have a relationship with your child, and what you are putting into it, you are going to get out of it. This is another human in your life that is being guided by these same principles of interconnectedness and the same states of their brain as anyone else. Okay. So we have to remember that we are in this journey with your child. This is a family dynamic. You are going to have to work together to reach goals and accomplish things and make change, and that your child is a partner in this experience, in this relationship. We have to view our children as a contributing member in this relationship. Okay. And you're going to be in this relationship, this parent-child relationship, forever. Forever. This does not stop when your child is 10 or 16 or 18 or 21, or when they have their first child, or when they get married. Like, this does not end, right? Like, you are going to be in this parent-child relationship until you die. Okay. And how many of us have strained relationships with our own parents, or know someone who does, or even with your grandparents or aunts or uncles or whatever? And I fully understand that many of us are in survival in the short term right now, trying to get through tantrums and whining and all of the things that parenting a young child entails. But we have to make a conscious effort to try to be parenting for the long term, and to remember that, I don't know about you, but it literally kills me to think about the fact that I'm contributing to a relationship right now with my child, and that if I create a strained relationship with my child now, that in the future, there could be a situation in which my child doesn't want to have a relationship with me because of how the relationship looks right now, or that they won't feel safe coming to me, or that they won't want to share their worries with me when they're a teenager or when they're an adult struggling with their own problems, and that, they might literally dread having to come see me during holiday celebrations. And that kills me to think about, right? That's so, so devastating to me to think about how much I love this little tiny human, and that like someday, if I don't work on this relationship with them now and throughout this parenting experience, that they could dread having to spend time with me. And so we have to think about, what do you want your relationship to look like with your child? What do you think they want it to look like now and in the future, right? And so this is how we come back to this concept of unity. And so what does this mean in the short term, right? This power of unity helps us to reflect on moments of frustration with our child, that what we are doing in the situation, that what we're experiencing or what we're putting out there matters. that we're contributing to the experience. Okay. And how do we want to contribute to the chaos in the moment? So let me give you a little bit of a recent example, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of a personal story. This is my child. She is my oldest, and she, sorry about that, saying goodbye to a friend over here. So this is my child. She is me. She's not me, but she's me. She knows how to push my buttons so much. And she is everything that I was as a child, and pretty much everything that I constantly got in trouble for as a child. And so I am constantly having to reparent myself through her. And she's so feisty, to the point where she will tell me daily, "Mommy, that's my choice. And I make my choices. You don't make my choices." And it's, yeah, she's a feisty one. And so I'm going to be completely transparent with you. I have been struggling with her lately. We've had a lot of stress in the last couple months. I've been yelling way more than I would like to admit. Even as someone who knows all of these principles and things, even, like I am human, I have my moments. And so we've had a lot of stress going on. We've had work things and money things and time constraints and family obligations. We've had a lot of travel, and like not fun travel. We've had like funerals we've had to attend. I mean, it's just been really stressful lately. And she has absolutely felt all of my anxiety and my stress lately. And it has like exploded. It's erupted her behavior. And so recently we were out of town for a funeral service on my husband's side of the family. And my husband was off with his family trying to prep for this memorial service. And I was alone in a hotel room with my 2 young children, with my 3-year-old daughter and my 2-year-old son. And I was trying to get myself ready and trying to get my 2 children dressed for this service, while on a Zoom call and in a space in a hotel room that is not toddler proof at all, by the way. And so it was incredibly frustrating. And she was just everything, pushing back about everything. And getting into a lot of power struggles and like fighting with her brother over every single toy that he would touch. I mean, it was just like constant. And so again, I'm like trying to get them dressed. I'm trying to get myself dressed and do my hair and like trying to like contribute on this like work Zoom call. Like it was chaos. And I lost it. I snapped at her. And I told her she had to come sit down next to me in the bathroom while I was getting ready. And I gave her like a book or an iPad or something. I just like sat her down and I was like, "You need to sit here and you may not get up. Like you need to sit near me. You need to be away from your brother. You need like to take some time." And I was upset and frustrated, and I like let myself regulate. And after I like finished doing my hair, I got off the Zoom call. I ended that call. I closed the camera. And then I kind of took a deep breath and I got down on the floor with her and I sat down next to her. And of course, she's like whimpering in the corner. She's very upset that I yelled at her. She's, tired and stressed out as well. She doesn't know what's going on. There's a lot of chaos. And so I get down on the floor with her and I literally was honest with her. And I was like, "Hey, this feels really yucky to mommy. Mommy is having a really hard time. I know mommy is like really stressed out. Mommy is doing a lot of things at once. It feels very crazy right now. And I know it feels really yucky to me. And I know it probably also feels really yucky to you. Does this feel really yucky to you?" And she nodded. And I was like, "Yeah, this has been really hard, hasn't it? This morning has been really hard. And there's been a lot going on. And like you're having a yucky time making hurtful choices, and mommy's having a yucky time and making hurtful choices. And this sucks, doesn't it?" And she nodded to me. And I just said, "I don't want to have a yucky rest of the day. And I don't think you want to have a yucky rest of the day either. Can we turn this day around? Can we both agree that like, let's both be done with the yuck and like, let's just take a deep breath and like turn the day around. Can we do that?" And she got up and she hugged me and she was like, "Yeah, mommy, let's have a good day now." And I said, "Okay." And so I want to share that story because I want to show you like how you can use this power of unity to contribute in a positive way with your child, right? Like I could have power struggled with her for the rest of the day. I could have told her like, you're in trouble because you weren't listening to your brother and I was trying to work and you were, doing this and this and this and not following directions. And I could have power struggled with her all day. And had I done that, we still would have been at odds. Neither one of us feeling seen, neither one of us feeling that connectedness, that unity of being in this experience together. And so this is that concept of what I like to share of dropping in with your child. And so I just have a little visual here. It's not that exciting, but it's someone skateboarding on a half pipe, right? And so I love to use this visual because I think about if you drop in on the other side of the half pipe with your child, you're going to constantly just miss each other back and forth. You're constantly going to be power struggling. You're never going to meet in the middle. You're always just going to like go back and forth, missing each other every time. And so this is this reactive state. And if we instead think about how we can meet our child and drop into the experience with them, then we find that piece of unity to work our way out together, right? So I was willing to acknowledge that I was also contributing to the experience that my child was having in the chaos. And instead of power struggling with her and instead of telling her that she was wrong for feeling all these things or acting this certain way, I acknowledged that she was stressed and I was stressed and we were both having a really hard time and that we needed to find a way to move out of that together. And so we have to change our thinking from how do I make the world go my way versus how can I help to create the kind of world that I want to see? Instead of how do I get my child to do something, how can I help my child to be successful, right? And so I like to just bring this up because I think this is very important. In the long term or in the big picture, you might think about what are your family's values? And so in a in-person class, I would actually have you sit down and take a second to write down some of your values. What are your family's values? So just think about that for just a second. Think about what is a value your family has. What are these core values? And these core values are so, so important because it helps you to lay that foundation to fall back on, and it gives you your why. And your why can help to guide your family in moments of conflict and dysregulation or uncertainty. And it's essentially your family is like code of ethics, right? And that it holds everyone accountable, not just your children, not just your spouse, like everyone in your family, if you have this, these core values. And so oftentimes when I do this activity, many people will say things like kindness and love or respect or independence or whatever. But I want you to think about, what do those things really mean? Like that's a big, big, broad concept and idea, right? Like respect, very big, broad concept. And so I want you to challenge you to think about, what do those things really look like? And to start think about these family values in much more explicit terms. And so, for example, sometimes in a classroom, you might hear teachers saying to the other students to be a good listener, be a respectful listener. But a responsive teacher will teach the students what that actually looks like, right? So they might say something like, okay, we need to be respectful while we're listening to so-and-so. We need to sit crisscross quietly. Our eyes are on the person who's talking. And at the end, you should be able to repeat back what the speaker said or what their main point was or their concept, right? So it's really breaking down, like, what does being a respectful or a good listener really look like, truly? And so when we think about this in terms of our core values as a family, I want you to think about how you can break those things down for your family. And so this is actually a friend of mine had her family has been working on this living document, essentially of their family's values for the last couple of years. Truly, I think her and her husband started it even before they had kids. And it's been a living document. Like they've added to it, they've changed things as they've come up, and it hangs in their home. And so you can see that they have started to break down, like, what is it that their family really truly values? And so when challenging things come up, they can always reflect back on, is that action or behavior, is it in line with our family's values? Okay. I'll just kind of leave this one up here for just a second so you can kind of glance at it as well. So this idea is, I challenge you to start thinking about what your family's values are. What are those core values that you want yourself and your child, and your spouse or your partners or anyone else that is a caretaker in your family to uphold, and then to view your child as a contributing member in that experience, right? That, like, if you are all believing that these things are true and valid and that they're important and they're what your family's foundation rests on, then how do we all uphold these things and hold each other accountable to these, right? If we're telling our children that they have to be respectful towards us, and that looks like us, them answering when we ask them something and not ignoring us, then how are we doing the same thing? And that's a very easy example, as far as, like, it's very easy when your child's asking you a question and you're looking at something on your phone or you're sending an email on your computer to be like, yeah, whatever, and like brush them off. But, like, does that uphold the core value of your family, of like what that means to be respectful? And is everyone a contributing member in that? Is everyone being held to that standard? Okay. So now we're going to get to the conscious skill, that is in line with unity, and that is the skill of encouragement. Okay. And so if we are teaching this interdependence and this unity, it's also teaching us the life skills of being kind and helpful and caring and having this gratitude for each other, and valuing that interdependence and that unity, and to support each other, right? To go back in this, like, we're all in this together, and to, like, support each other through this experience. And so how many of us were raised with the gold star, high five, good job kind of praise? I'm willing to bet many of us. And if you got a treat, if you did something well, or you acted right, or maybe a caregiver, a parent would tell you how proud of you they were when you got, like, an A on a test, or you scored a goal, at your game or something. Okay. And now, reflecting on that, how many of us who were raised with this kind of parenting now struggle with people-pleasing tendencies, anxiety, fear of shame or disappointment, or feeling like your self-worth is tied into, like, what you can accomplish or what you can excel at? Or maybe you have a fear of failure. You don't want to try new things because you're afraid that you won't succeed at them. And I know that I do. I'm constantly volunteering myself for projects that I really honestly don't have time for in my life. But I know that a lot of my self-worth comes from, like, what can I accomplish? How many things can I, like, have my hands in that I can do well at, so people will praise me for all the amazing things I'm doing, right? And so it's really, really hard. And this is where we have to start talking about, what is the difference between praise and encouragement? And many of us were raised with praise, but we're not raised with encouragement. And so praise is the expression of approval or admiration for someone or something. Okay. Encouragement is the act of giving support, confidence, or hope. Right. And so, and really in conscious discipline terms, we really talk about giving hope. Okay. That hope and that support. So we're going to watch a little bit a little video here, and we are going to watch pretty much the full length of this one. So it's a few minutes long. So bear with me.
So check this out. Carol Dweck and her colleagues wanted to look into the impacts that praise had on children's development. So what they did is they took over 400 fifth grade students from all across the nation, and they did a really simple yet interesting study. Here's how it went down. They gave all the kids a really, really easy nonverbal IQ test. There were 10 questions, and at the end of the test, they praised all the children in one of two ways. The first group was praised for their intelligence. So they said, wow, great job. You must be really smart at this. Now, the second group was praised for their effort. So they said, wow, great job. You must have worked really, really hard at this. Now, this is a really subtle difference, but the impact it had is incredible. So after praising the kids and getting them divided up into the two groups, they gave them all an option for their next test. The first option was, hey, this next test is going to be a little bit harder, but it's going to be a great opportunity to learn and grow. Now, the second option was, this next test will be similar to the first, and you will surely do well on it. Now, the interesting thing is, out of the group that was praised for their intelligence, 67% of them chose the easier option, while 92% of the kids who were praised for their effort chose the harder test. This is unbelievable to think about, how just the subtle difference in the way that they were praised had such an impact. Carol Dweck explains why this happens.
Child or adult hears, oh, you think I'm brilliant and talented. That's why you admire me. That's why you value me. I better not do anything that will disprove this evaluation. As a result, they enter a fixed mindset, they play it safe in the future, and they limit the growth of their talents. Whereas focusing on the strategies they use, the way they're stretching themselves and taking on hard tasks, the intense practice they're doing, those are the kinds of things that say to a child or an older athlete, it's about the process of growth. As a result, they don't feel, oh, if I make a mistake, you won't think I'm talented. They think, oh, if I don't take on hard things and stick to them, I'm not going to grow.
Next, Dweck and her colleagues gave all the kids a really, really difficult test. It was one that they would surely fail, but they wanted to look at how the different kids attacked this challenge. Dweck noticed that the group that was praised for effort worked harder, longer, and actually enjoyed this test more than the group that was praised for their intelligence. This group got really frustrated with this test and had the tendency to give up early. After this artificially induced failure round, all of the kids were given a third and final test. Now, this test was the same level of difficulty as the first one, but check out the results. The group that was praised for their intelligence actually did worse on this test than the first one. Their average score actually dropped by 20%, while the group that was praised for their effort did significantly better, raising their average score by nearly 30%. This is a 50% difference in performance that was caused by a few subtle differences in the way that they were praised. This study shows how praise can either make or break a child's development. I mean, we all do it. We all want to be positive with the children we work with. So teachers, coaches, parents are always looking for ways to support their kids and tend to praise them quite a bit.
Okay. So I'm going to stop it there because we're going to kind of talk about the rest of us. So first, I want to preface this by saying, like, this does not mean you can never tell your child good job or you're going to ruin them. I have absolutely told my child, like, oh, good job, honey, you did it. But that's just saying that we want to make sure that that is not the majority of our praise, that the majority of our praise with our child is not focused on pleasing us, or looking for our approval, right? And so, if you're going to say good job, following it up with what your child did and focusing on like the effort, right? So here is, okay. So this skill of encouragement is truly saying, I honor and celebrate and acknowledge you and your choice and the choices that you have made. Okay. And this, we can see how profound of an impact this has on our children. And so I also want you to take a second to stop and evaluate what your own internal monologue is saying. And so I don't think I have the Conscious Discipline book with me right now, but it asks a series of questions actually in this chapter of the Easy to Love, Difficult to Discipline book about, like during the day when you wake up, do you focus on, all the things that you have to do or have to do better? Or do you wake up with like an appreciation for your day and how capable you are to handle your day? Or do you focus on things that you should have done rather than celebrating the things that you have done? And do you talk kindly to your body and how much effort you put into your just day-to-day experience, taking care of yourself? Or are you constantly talking badly to yourself or putting yourself down in these internal thoughts? And so we have to be careful about what our internal monologue is from day to day, because our internal monologue becomes our child's internal narrative as well. And so an example of this might be, if you are stressed about the house, right? And like, you're like, oh my gosh, the house is like a disaster. It needs to get cleaned up. And you tell your child, like, go clean your room and make your bed. And you need to do that right now. Like, the house is a disaster. We need to clean up the house. And so your child goes off and they like skip off and they make their bed. And then you come in and you are like, you didn't make your bed. And your child's like, yeah, I did make my bed. And you're like, no, it's still a mess. Like, it's still a disaster. Like, you didn't tuck in the sheets or tuck in the blanket and the pillow is like halfway off the mattress. Like, right. So like, what we're feeling is we're insecure about what our home has to look like based on a certain standard by society, right? Like, feel like it has to look a certain way because otherwise we're failing at keeping our own home clean, right? That's our internal narrative. And in turn, now we are taking our internal, putting that internal narrative out to our child as like, oh, you tried, but it wasn't good enough, right? Like, your effort in putting your bed together wasn't good enough. Instead of acknowledging like, hey, I know you worked really hard on making your bed. I noticed that the pillow is hanging halfway off the bed. How can we fix that? Right? So there's this lack of shame if we change into this encouragement style. And so this is where we start talking about the skill of noticing. And this is really, really important for growth mindset work with children and just noticing what the child is doing. So the next time they come to you with like a beautiful picture of a rainbow that they drew, and they're like, mommy, daddy, look what I drew. Instead of being like, oh my gosh, good job, it's such a beautiful rainbow. Instead, kind of being like, oh, I noticed you used like 5 different colors. That's really interesting. Tell me more about that. Right. And so I've taken it off of like pleasing me and instead talking to the child about their choices and why they chose those things. And are they happy with their work, right? And so the other one I want to mention too is the power of yet. And so a lot of children who struggle with like perfectionism, or they want, their parents' guidance and help with everything, you'll hear the like, I can't do it. And so when we switch our mindset to yet, right? Like, oh, you can't do it yet. You're still learning how to do this. And then guiding them and supporting them through the experience. And so my own daughter will even tell me like, oh, I'm still learning to like that food when we put certain things on her plate that we know she doesn't like, but we're still offering it. And she'll be like, I don't enjoy that food yet, or I don't like that food yet. I'm still learning to like that food. And so, but it gives her this idea that like, you know, you may not like that food today, but you may like it in the future, right? Like we don't know. It kind of, it changes to the growth mindset, right? Like nothing is finalized. We're always growing and changing. And so a resource for this is big life journals are wonderful for this kind of work. And if you sign up for their newsletters, I believe, they also have like free printables that they'll send you every, I think Friday, they send them out. And so this kind of gives you some examples of some of their like little printables about growth mindset work and things that you can say or encourage in your child, things you can ask them about their day or about things that they're working on. And they also have journals, and I believe they also have a podcast for kids. I'm not 100% sure on that one, so don't quote me on that, but I feel like they have a podcast for children too. And so here's some wonderful examples of things that you could say instead of good job that are types of encouragement. So, you know, you did it. It was hard, but you kept trying. You're so capable. You really focused on that. You listened to your body. I can tell you took your time with that work. It was hard at first, but it got easier. And how did you do that? Or what could you do? Is this working for you? What else could you try? Right. So these are all growth mindset things that offer support and encouragement without it being about us as the parent or the caregiver. Here's some other really great ones. Kind of like switches that you can try. This is a big life journal handout as well. And then we really want this to be focusing on like the child, you know, you did it. We can do hard things, right? We can succeed at things that we try at, even if it takes us multiple times, right? Even if we fail, like it's okay to try again. And then celebrating these moments of accomplishment together, right? And so I want you to walk away from this talk tonight just thinking about, remember, this is about progress, not perfection. So just taking one thing from tonight's class that you want to try to implement in your family. And so maybe that is coming up with the core values, right? Maybe you just want to sit down and think about what are your family's core values? What are those things that you want to work to hold each other to, and starting that living document essentially of what those values are. Or maybe it is that you want to try that power of unity of just like dropping in with your child in those moments of frustration and like acknowledging to your child that like, this is hard. Everyone here is struggling. Like, what can we do to work out of this situation together? Right. And to like be a part of it with them. Maybe it is working on the skill of encouragement. Maybe you want to just work on that noticing, right? Or the power of like, not yet, right? Like you're still working on that. Or maybe it's just like trying to come up with something other than good job. Maybe you just want to work on that for a little bit. So again, remember, this is about progress, not perfection. Don't try to do this all. Just pick one thing that you want to take with you for this class. And then if you would like my resources, this has like some blogs. I've bookmarked some conscious discipline, like the sites and some of the resources that are there. You can scan this and it'll take you to some of my other recordings. So all of that is in this document. And remember, don't let yourself become so concerned with raising a good kid that you forget that you already have one. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice night.